Are we
Yeah.
on?
Yeah. Good morning.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Proactive Health Collective of Keene. Joining us today are Doctors Matt and Tisa Abatelli of Cheshire Wellness, Rebecca Montrone of Wondrous Roots, and Allison Millar of Basic Balance.
Got it. Yeah.
I always have trouble with that, with the bees or something like that. And I'm Dr. Gene Clerkin, Monadnock Natural Health. We are going to be talking about gut health, right? The digestive system, which if anybody's been to any of my webinars or seminars, you know that I spend a large amount of time talking about the gut because it really, in my opinion, is the key to all health. And when the gut and digestive system is off, there really is, it affects us on so many levels. So I think of it, our digesting of food, taking in nutrients, which is the basic building blocks for every building tissue, building glands, organs, hormones, neural connections. There isn't anything that doesn't happen without nutrients. We have the microbiome that we can talk about in there that has so many functions, symbiotic, which I think would be an interesting topic to get into. The immune system, 80% of our immune system is housed in our gut. So it's just so much going on here. Who wants to jump in here with me?
So I just missed everything you said because I was trying to put this on my time. I turned my volume down. So
we're talking about vacations on the Cape.
We're talking about gut health. But
yeah, just all the different. We just went through like just some of the many things that are affected by gut health.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, gut health is so paramount. And in Chinese medicine, the spleen and the stomach organ systems are the main sort of things that govern digestion. But it's so rare that you only have a patient only presents with symptoms in these areas. So they might have like bloating and loose bowel movements and nausea, and that would be, easy to make that correlation. But so many times a patient will come in with a completely seemingly unrelated issue, and I'm going to trace it back to the gut health because there's so many interactions between the gut and all the different organ systems that it's really so often it is the root of headaches, skin conditions, autoimmune issues. A lot of time I see gut stuff, fibromyalgia, like the muscles, arthritis, pain, insomnia, anxiety, depression, all of these can be traced back to the gut. So it really is so important.
Yeah, it's interesting that you would even say emotional kinds of things because most people think of serotonin as being a neurotransmitter created in the brain, but it's really, a lot of it is in the gut that we make serotonin. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's part of what makes it such a great topic because it doesn't matter, what the concern is. It's almost a guarantee that what we're going to talk about today is part of that puzzle.
Yeah.
And, in that emotional piece, we call the heart and the gut like our second brains. There's so much neural tissue there that, your brain is essentially a bundle of neural tissue. You have a bundle of neural tissue surrounding the gut, a tremendous amount of neural tissue. And, those sayings from the past, like, oh, I had a gut feeling. My gut told me to do that. I was guided by my gut. And, this is a tangent, but, we have up here like our intellect, the things we learn, the conversations that we have about those things. And we sort of use that to make decisions, but there's also the neural information that we get from our body, like this just feels right. And and you sort of like bypass the intellect to access some other abilities, I guess.
Yeah. And I would ask, honestly, if we have intact gut health, we should have really good overall health, but so many people don't. And what are some of the reasons people don't have excellent gut health today? And there's so many. Does anybody want to throw? I would throw out, one of my favorite topics, but vaccinations. When people, when babies, infants receive these vaccinations, there's a huge inflammatory effect in the gut that causes a leaky gut problem. And so things that are not supposed to be getting into the bloodstream and traveling elsewhere, what's in the gut is supposed to stay in the gut, right? It's not supposed to go everywhere else, like Vegas. And so we end up with glutamate reaction in the brain. We end up with, this is the autism connection, because you have the gut-brain connection there. So also with this leaky gut and with these big porous spaces, say, picture this in your intestinal wall, large molecules of food are getting out into the bloodstream that aren't supposed to, and the body's creating an immune response, like an attack against it. And this is where we're getting our food allergies and things like that. So we're destroying people's guts right from birth at this point in time. I mean, we're just like wreaking havoc with what was intended to be. And that's terrible.
Yeah, and I can just tell you this from a functional medicine perspective. Every single person that we work with needs to have their gut overhauled. Every single one of them, without exception. So you're totally right. It's our foods. It's those sweeteners. There's so many different levels. Like even antibiotics, which certainly have a time and a place, but they do cause a lot of destruction to the microbiome, which then
Right.
leads to this situation that you're speaking about, leaky gut, which is, there's supposed to be a selective uptake of, yeah, you're a digested food particle. Sure, come on in. We want you in the bloodstream. But when these spaces open up, as you say, and toxins and other pathogens and foods all get into the bloodstream, the immune system's constantly on. And, there's a time, let's say anything else, there's a time for a response, immune response, but when it's going all the time, that can be destructive to the overall, function of the body.
Yeah, and think about how much processed foods we eat as well to go along with that. How our diet has substantially changed over the years. Just even within like the matter of a decade or two, how much more accessible processed foods are rather than, whole nutritious foods. And we have gotten so busy that we've opted out in the easy way to just grab something quick and go. And so we're bombarding our system with even more toxins, and that's a stress on the system. So it's creating the fight or flight response, the sugar, the caffeine, again, processed preservatives, colorings, which have a lot to do with emotional and intellectual processes. And we know what to do, but we don't do what we're supposed to. And it's really kind of sad that we have to encourage people to go back to the basics. You need to eat your fruits and vegetables and proteins and minimize carbs, but not say don't have carbs, but just be smart about it, and less sugar, less processed, right? Make whole meals. And I think within the last 6 months, we've had a great opportunity to slow down and be home more to honor that and to spend time with people and to make food. But how many people really took that into consideration? You go to the grocery store, you still see people buying, potato chips and sodas and all that stuff, when, man, we had a great opportunity to clean out a lot of the bad habits that we have accumulated over the years. And then it creates, emotional responses. And then that's where frustration comes in, and how that's intoxicating not only our gut, but it's affecting our mind. It's affecting our spine. And like we talked last week about the heart, the three brains, right, Dr. Jean, your brain, your heart brain, and your gut brain, how they like intertwine and how they connect with each other. And if you have more of a fight or flight response constantly, how your brain signals the rest of the body to do the processes they're supposed to, it's not going to be as adequate. And there's many things to clean it up and to change that. It's just like, what is it going to take to really get you the energy to do that? That's kind of the question we're at right now with gut health, I think, anyway.
I really like that. It'd be nice to hear through everyone's lens, sort of professionally speaking, from our different disciplines here, what we see as some of the biggest challenges, and then sort of where we head with the solution to those things too. And maybe that's a two-part. We could start with the one, but I'd love to hear some of the lenses from everybody on that.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear from a Chinese medicine perspective, how the gut, because I know there's always cool, interesting stuff when you talk about Chinese medicine.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the problems, I mean, the spleen and the stomach are the earth element, and those are the main organ systems involved in digestion. And that's like the late summertime. So it's when everybody comes together, and it's about nourishment and bringing people together. And so like a typical, people will have personalities. So a typical like earth type personality will be somebody that like loves to cook, and they love to like set a table and bring all of their family in and eat it. And when that gets a little bit out of balance, out of whack, then that person is constantly giving their resources and not nourishing themselves enough. So that's kind of like to paint the picture of the personality. So the way that plays out in Western society, it's this like overwork. We're just like, we're doing so much for other people or so much for our jobs, and we're not giving our bodies and our muscles the nourishment that we need to begin with. And so that's when you get this like spleen qi deficiency, is the classic sort of term to say that your gut's basically not breaking things down well and assimilating them into the building blocks, which would be the blood and the qi, or the energy that flows in your body. So from that, and like I was saying earlier, you rarely see that as the only thing that's going on. So from there, you're going to have the interrelationships between the spleen and the different organ systems. So probably the most common one that I see is the interaction between the spleen organ system and the liver organ system. And again, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your liver per se. It's a whole different language. But this will be like, it's the wood element overacting on the earth element. And I think I've talked about this before. It's like this overwork, and you're just going. And the liver gets kind of like this hyperactive, and then it sort of insults the spleen because it's just giving out all of its resources. So it's almost got to step in and do the work for the spleen. And so that it'll reverse the direction of the qi, so you can get the stomach qi. So the stomach qi will come up, and you'll get acid reflux. You can also get headaches. And especially you could get vertex headaches if it's more livery, or you could get frontal headaches if it's more like a spleen qi deficiency is the primary aspect of it. But that's one way. And then another way to look at it is that the spleen's not breaking down the food well enough to it can't create the blood, the volume in the body. And the blood, it moves with the qi in the pathways of the body, and the blood holds the spirit. So not only will you have, things you would think of with blood deficiency, like numbness or tingling or neuropathy, dizziness if you stand up quickly. Your headache might be better with pressure because everything's kind of like empty. But that's a lot of mental patterns too, like anxiety and depression. Think about postpartum depression is a great example of blood deficiency, because you've given like all these resources in childbirth, and what should be a really happy event is just kind of black and white because the blood holds the spirit. This is another way to think about it. And then the interaction with the lungs, you see a lot of skin stuff. So the skin will really have its root in the digestive system. And then another common one is kidney yang. So this is like the fire, like it's your metabolism. It's like the fire that's the cauldron under the spleen. So it's kind of warming everything up and rotting your food to transform it into blood and resources. And when the spleen and the kidney yang are not great, then it's those two together like hold things up. So you can have prolapses in the body. You're easy to bruise because your blood vessels aren't holding your blood. And also like then hypothyroidism stuff kind of creeps in, like there's just sluggish metabolism, you feel really heavy. and then you can start, I could go on and on, but
Amazing how connected it is.
yeah, it is.
It
It's so
is.
cool. But there's so many, every patient, you can see some sort of interplay of the gut. But one other really good one to note that's probably pertains to many of our listeners would be dampness. So when the spleen isn't fully digesting and assimilate everything, it creates this substance in the body that we call dampness. And you can see it on the tongue as like a thick tongue coat. And a good way to think about it is gluten is very damp forming in the body. It's a protein. And if you mix it with water, it's like this gunky type of like substance. And this actually is like what dampness does in your body. It kind of like it's heavy and it lodges into your joints and things. And that's why like arthritic patients, their pain is worse in damp weather because they have a lot of dampness in their body. And that's why their pain gets better if they are on a gluten-free diet a lot of the time.
Wow.
So interesting.
A lot of stuff with digestion in Chinese medicine.
Yeah, that's fascinating, really.
Yeah. I'm always interested to hear like your perspectives when I say like the liver organ system and the spleen, like if you can see that core, you know.
Well, I think about it when you talk about the blood, right? So looking at our anatomy and talking about what Tisa was saying about the fast food kind of thing. So one of the things that we've really gotten away from, if we don't take time to prepare meals where, you know, an hour before you're eating or more, you're smelling things, you're maybe tasting things as you're cooking, and you're kind of priming your saliva for that, your amylase is getting in there. The bitters, that's why salad with vinegar is usually like a before you eat the main meal or something, because you're getting that acid that needs to be there for the stomach phase of digestion. And so when you just kind of drive up to a window and grab something and you haven't had that going on, you kind of miss out on all of that prep for adequate digestion. And so I think, you know, we have to remember that digestion, the whole alimentary canal is from the mouth all the way down to, you know, the toilet. So there's so many different things that happen in there, and they really depend on one another. Like the success of what happens in the small intestine is really predicated on the success of what happened in the stomach. So when you get to the small intestine, the food is supposed to be digested properly to this consistency called chyme. And that depends on having enough stomach acid in the stomach. Now you go to a completely alkaline environment in the small intestine, and that's where the majority of your nutrients are. You have a lot of peristalsis. The small intestine is skinny, and it's very, very close to the bloodstream. So you have a lot of this activity going on to really get the nutrients out of that food into the bloodstream. So I almost think of that as like what you were talking about as spleen kind of stuff. I'm not sure, but kind of talking about the blood, because that's where most of that nutrient uptake is. So people with gluten sensitive, people with celiac, that's what the whole problem is that the villi lie down and they cannot take up nutrients into the small intestine. Well, if you can't take up nutrients into the small intestine, you're really screwed, because that's where it happens.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. We don't talk, small intestine and blood don't really go together in Chinese medicine, but that's really interesting. And small intestine is, yeah, it's just a different language. But we talk about small intestines like it separates the clear from the turbid. So if you know, and it's the yang aspect of the heart. So maybe a mental pattern where like everything's just not clear to you. It's good to work on the small intestine, like clear, just organizing.
That's a great example too of how, you know, your physiology does in fact interact with your experience. You know, like there's like, so if you have like something that's sort of like you have clarity or you don't have clarity, and the fact that that can actually be mimicked in the physiology and then your experience of your world and your life. We see the external environment, the internal environment as two different things. And oftentimes it's something in the external environment that's causing our, you know, distaste in the internal environment. But we really do see the world as we are, and it's not a judgment, it's just an acknowledgement of really how incredibly interwoven we are with life itself.
And it can be such a vicious cycle, because if we're not feeling great in our mind, then we want the instant gratification that we get from processed foods or from sugar, and that instant kind of feel good. And that's just gonna worsen the problem overall.
Yeah, furthering your point there, Becky.
Yeah.
Becky,
Yeah,
was it you who are saying like we eat for emotion, like we eat to satisfy our emotions?
No.
No. Well.
Although it's true.
Although it's true. I thought you had said it at one point in time, or somebody said
Some
it, or I
people
heard
do.
it.
Some
But yeah,
people
we
do.
like.
Oh, I may have said that in another program. Okay, so if your serotonin is low, your tryptophan, which boosts serotonin, amino acid, right, is found in protein foods, and specifically like turkey, chicken, eggs, milk, that kind of thing. But these all have competing amino acids in them, and they're not all going to make it across the blood-brain barrier. So your brain, if you're low in serotonin, which is crucial to your health, is going to want to encourage you to raise your blood sugar level quickly. So that can give you cravings for sweets and carbs and things like that, because that blood sugar boost will diminish those competing amino acids, and the tryptophan will win the race. So what we do for that is we use something like 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is already in the form that's across the blood-brain barrier, especially if somebody wants to go on a low-carb diet, which can make them very depressed and very irritable because they're not getting that serotonin. But maybe that you were hearkening back. I might have mentioned that some other time. Yeah.
I would like to, maybe the doctors at Vitelli can talk about, there's a chicken and egg thing because everything affects everything else. But from a standpoint of, say we're experiencing, an event in our life where we're having trouble dealing with it, right? And that manifests in our cells as stress. How's that going to translate to the gut, and what that might mean for us physically, and what other challenges might that cause?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So a lot of this stuff is chicken or the egg eventually. And if you look at it in terms of stress, so if the body has two main ways of operating, one is a full-on engagement fight or flight mode where they're in a state of readiness, and we might call that stress, and that would create a stress physiology. And the other is the more wine and dine or rest and digest system, where we're at peace. That's where you're sort of like laying on the mossy riverbank where the birds are singing. It's obvious that you're in a safe zone, and just like, the sound of the water just sort of lulls you away and there's no concern. So obviously there's a spectrum in between the two. And is there or is there not more stressful activity on the planet right now than there was, say, 100 years ago? And I know it's all relative, but we can just kind of take a look at our history and see how this stress has ramped up in terms of our experience just in a few short generations. And that really does play out in our physiology, because while the stress has ramped up and the world is moving faster than ever before, our physiology has not changed. So in fact, the physiology, one way to look at it, I had a great friend of mine, naturopath, who used to say, physiologically, we're still coming out of the cave. This human operating system, our original instructions that we were given, they just haven't really changed. So all of these things that we're talking about today, in essence, help to upgrade the very operating system that you have. And that's important because the stress, as that goes into your body, literally affects like every gland, tissue, organ, cell, and the function and connectivity between those things. So you can take a look through any one of these lenses and see, how A, B, and C are connected, and then that will show you how that is affecting you. Because what will happen is that if the whole system is basically like braced in a hypervigilant state for a real threat, or just the perception of, or perhaps even just a well-worn rut of the go, 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 the rush and din of society, then all of those cells are braced. Those villi, like you talked about, Becky, are lying down, so to speak. The connection between the organs, not there. The inflammation, like you said, Jean, goes through the roof. And then once that happens, forget about it. And now we're reaching for like the nearest life raft. Great example of that is sugar. And what does that do? Well, that just increases everything else and actually puts more stress and more tension into the body. So in our office, we look at the nervous system as master control. Obviously, one path up the same mountain that we're all talking about here toward optimal health. If we look at that, we can see which organ systems are being stressed and are not communicating. We can see, you know, how that's flowing through the body, how the body's adapting to that, how those different modes of fight or flight or rest and digest are working for someone like that. But ultimately, what that leads to is that leads to a state of coherence. And I think that that's something that we could all talk to. And the way that we describe coherence in our office is, imagine that you are, so we have all these aspects to the human experience. Well, imagine each one of those is an individual fan blade. So as soon as you press go on the fan, you start up your fan in the summer, you see individual blades going around, and then eventually what does it do? It cycles, and then it's just one continuous piece, right? So you can't see the individual fan blades anymore. What you see is you just see one coherent circle. And ultimately, that's where we're heading with all of this, how to create more coherence. I'd love to hear thoughts on that.
Well, you know, we're kind of getting into like the solution piece, I think, a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Stand by then, part two.
I want to go because we're getting to be about that time. I just do want to say though that when I sit down with somebody like a new client that I'm going to potentially work with, and we go through their history, really everything, it's like, oh yeah, that relates to the gut. Yep, that, like you can really trace it back. Everything traces back to the gut. And just for some of our listeners out there, the main things that we see or that come up, and some of you brought these up, are first of all, not enough stomach acid. I think that Becky mentioned this. This is huge on a lot of levels. And the cause, can be a lot of things like toxins and breakdown and the body just not functioning, the nerve system, like you were just saying, Matt, where when your resources are directed towards survival, you're not running these things. You're not running the digestive system. You're running the defense systems. So you don't have a lot left. And so if somebody's on like that all the time, and even a somewhat low level of stress, there are certain resources that are taken away from their system on an ongoing basis, causing long-term dysfunction. But when we don't have enough acid, people actually experience that as acid reflux. Mm-hmm. When we think, what they've been told is, oh, you need more Tums, or you go to the doctor and get some kind of a Resveratrol or something like that to lessen the acid even more. And the danger here is that acid, as you mentioned, Becky, is important for breaking down your proteins, breaking free nutrients from your foods like calcium, magnesium, zinc that you must have. If you open up a physiology book, it's all over the place. You need these things, right? Your amino acid chains and all that. And so, one, if you don't have enough acid, you're not getting that. You're not getting that. You're not able to draw those nutrients. It's not what you eat. You are what you eat, you've always heard, but it's what you can get from what you eat that really is important. And then, as you also mentioned, Becky, once upstream is not right, everything downstream now becomes a problem. And that includes the absorption in the small intestine, whether or not that happens and to what degree, and also downstream in the lower gut. Mm-hmm. And so, when we're working with somebody, we're paying attention to all these because they all matter, but we usually start right upstream, like what can we do to help facilitate, getting the nutrients into our body, because if we can't get nutrients to our body, it's hard to heal. We have to actually get them in. And then working through, the absorption and one other common issue that people have is that we get these pathogens, stealth pathogens like parasites, really, really common. Once they sort of shut up shop, once we're weakened and they're able to set up shop, now they're also drawing, they're being fed too. They're drawing nutrients. And we tend to want to feed them more carbohydrates, which then feed those, the candidas and stuff, which are naturally there, but they start taking over the neighborhood. So, these are really common problems. Like just about everybody out there who has any other health problem, including thyroid issues, skin issues, certainly any inflammatory issues where you're feeling it in your body, your muscles, your joints. This is all tied to the digestive system, and without really going through and overhauling the digestive system, in my opinion, is you really have no chance of totally overcoming that. So I just wanted to mention that, just really very, very, very common, the most common thing I think of all. So what do we do?
So some of the things that are important are Oh, and I just have to go and make a comment, like things like surgeries or procedures that people undergo, even from gallbladder surgery. If you can save your gallbladder, save it, okay? Because, you know, they'll tell you you don't need your gallbladder, and that is ridiculous. So the gallbladder plays a really important part in digestion. And people, when they have cholecystectomy, when they go through gallbladder surgery, they're not told you are going to need these digestive enzymes in supplement form, or, you know, bitters and herbal form or whatever. You're going to need certain things for the rest of your life because you don't have a gallbladder. So people aren't told that. And now they're not able to digest fats properly. They don't have, they might be eating their salad with their beautiful antioxidants, their tomatoes and red pepper or peppers or all of those wonderful things, but without the fat. That's the whole point of salad dressing on salad, is that this gets these antioxidants into your eyes for macular degeneration or for things like that. So when you mess with these things, when you do like a lap band procedure on somebody to keep them from to lose weight, what are you doing? You're messing with a brilliant system that was designed to work as it was. And you're just saying, oh, we're just going to do that. Or worse, gastric bypass. And you're taking out certain parts of the stomach and certain parts of the duodenum that are crucial for this path that starts in the mouth and goes all the way down to the toilet. And you just said, well, you know, we can just bypass that. And you think people are going to do well with that? Those things, that's extreme. But I mean,
It is, but think about this, Becky. I just have to say this. It's almost like if you're drinking too much beer, you want to chop your hand off. That'll solve the problem.
There you go.
I can do a straw.
Yeah, right. You know, we see devastating things. I think one thing that we can say for people if they have, okay, so also talking Matt, Tisa, and well, all of us talk about the vagus nerve. We talk about that a lot, but the vagus nerve is very involved in digestion. This is one of the cranial nerves, comes down through here, through the sternum, very important for digestion. So I think having, you know, these things, this all open and everything running, right, as it should, is going to have a big impact on the gut. But because we see with vagus nerve impairment, we see slowed gastric motility. So that means you eat, and number one, and if you don't have enough stomach acid, you're going to feel full for like 3 hours, because the small intestine doesn't want your undigested stuff from the stomach. It's basically going like this. Please don't come in here. Finally, it has to let it in, but now it's fermenting. And so now you have gas and bloating. And that's just going to continue down through the whole colon and everything, all of this stuff that was never prepared properly. So digestive enzymes with a little bit of betaine hydrochloride, I would recommend for people with bloating and gas and stuff like that. So you're giving what the pancreas are supposed to be doing, donating the amylase and the protease and the lipase and all of that. You're giving it some help there. So I think sometimes digestive enzymes with some betaine are a good thing for people with digestive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Vagus nerve, it's one of the simplest things that I recommend, not always the easiest because we're just busy, but the simplest thing that you can do for gut health from the lens of Chinese medicine is to relax while you eat. Just when you're eating, just eat. Just eat and focus on nourishing your body and chew thoroughly. You want to chew like way more than you think that you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another part of gut health in Chinese medicine is you want to think of the digestive system as a wood stove. So your spleen and your stomach, it needs to warm everything and like kind of rot it down, just like over a stove, before you can assimilate anything. So if you're eating raw vegetables that are cold and you're having ice in your liquids, think about how much energy that's taking your body to transform all that stuff into what the building blocks that it needs in your body. You know, if you have a raw carrot and you leave it on the counter and then you have a cooked carrot, the one that's cooked is going to rot a lot quicker and go down, you know, degrade into the earth and assimilate with the earth. But the raw one is just going to hang out for days until it does anything. So all that energy that you could be using for healing and repairing your body or your cognitive function is going to be going towards your digestion if you're having these cold things that need to be warmed up. So slowing down your food intake, relaxing while you digest things. And I think that probably plays along with the vagus nerve too. You know, if it just your sympathetic nervous system, you're going to assimilate more. You're going to be in a more yin state and kind of get the most out of it. And then having things that are warm and cooked and easy to digest.
I wanted to, you also mentioned real quick, I was going to actually say, or ask you this question, because you always seem to relate, you know, when you're talking about energy systems and the channels, how that relates to life and how we're living life, whether we're coming together, whether they're nourishing. And so it would seem that that's a really important part. You did mention one, like when you're eating, really eat and make that in of itself the action that you're taking. But you seem to always bring in other things about the season and what we should do with the season. And I guess, would you say that that would help balance your body by honoring the rhythms of the season?
Living with the earth element, and well, no matter what season you're in, you can bring that into your life. You know, making sure that you have a good support network and you're having nourishment, not only with food, but nourishment in your life. You know, giving yourself that warm bubble bath at the end of the day, or whatever it is to you that you need. You know, a brisk walk in the morning time. Just nourishment and people, like just community, bringing people together and getting that. So this is the perfect time of year to take care of your gut. It'll really make a big difference. The late summertime, the harvest season. Having a garden is probably amazing for your gut health. Not only are you're connecting with the earth, you have your hands in the soil, so you're like in the earth element, and then it's food that you're gathering, and then you're gonna cook with it. And then just the bacteria that's in the soil that's going to be so helpful for our gut health too. So many good things about having a garden.
I love that. And so for those of you who are listening and that's really resonating with, like, here's your opportunity. You know, like, you know who you are. You're like, that really sounds like it would be a great idea. Like, awesome. Now's the time.
And I have to go back to the time for prep. So Dale, my husband, is wonderful. Sue, one of my assistants, was working. She lives a long ways away, so she was spending the night Wednesday night. And Dale had this wonderful dinner planned. But the good thing was that the chicken was marinating, and it was about a half hour after I got home before we ate, because I don't want to walk into my house and just sit down with a plate of food in front of me. I love that, like, pre-time where you smell the food, you know, all of that. When I cook, it's very relaxing for me to come home. Like, I'll take, you know, an hour to just slice these tomatoes from the garden, unseed them. And I love that. I love the smell, the basil, the stuff like that. And it's all part of the meal. It's all part of what we were meant to do. We weren't just supposed to, like, sit down, like, there's your food.
Pull up to the window.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you starve, sometimes things happen, and fast food is, you know, or whatever, if you eat fast, but ideally the whole meal, you know, experience, from preparing the food, from getting the fresh ingredients to the soothing process of getting them together in a peaceful environment, the laughter, the fun of talking with people while you're doing it, it's all part of it. And it is integral. Again, it gets us ready to eat. It prepares our bodies for it. And I think that's super important spiritually, in getting those nerves just calmed out.
Yeah, preparation. This is important.
And maybe if we learn to take the time to start to honor that, because, like, what are we doing as soon as we get home? Like, we get home late, you know, we're not, you know, early, you don't get home at 5 o'clock, wish we did, but we don't. And, you know, taking that time, we love cooking together, and I'm usually the sous chef and Matt's the cook, and we take that time and have fun with it. And I feel like society's losing a little bit of that, or a lot of that, because it's like you come home, you want food already ready, and then you're rushing home to what? To sit on the couch and watch TV? Like, is that, you know, where are we at? Like, the connective culture is lost. And obviously right now it's even more challenging because we can't be around people, or we're told not to be around people. But I mean, we've had friends over and we social distance and, you know, respect where they're at and be on the deck and have their kids come over and play in the yard and, you know, make food together. And it's all about being connected, like Allison was saying, and like having that relationship with your garden, with your food. Becky, being, you know, taking the time to prepare, thank your food. I mean, one of the biggest ways to get the most out of the food is to be grateful for the food that you have in front of you, whether it's prepared by you or not. And one of the biggest things that we work on, especially when it comes to your spine and your nervous system, is like, we understand that the shape, the tone, the tension and position of your body, like your spinal structure, is in direct relation to your shape, your tone, your tension and position of your life. Because if there's a lot of distortion going on, and I know I've said this before, we always think you are what you eat, but it's really more you are what you're able to digest and get from your external environment food wise. It really does play a role. And if we're just like constantly in a hurry, it's going to make a difference. We did have just a new patient come in this week, a gentleman, a little bit older. And the poor man, like, his spine was just a mess. And he wasn't really surprised when he saw it, but like, he's like, I have this weird curve in my spine. And I was like, yeah, you know, like you could see it just from the photo. And then we looked at the x-ray as well. And he's like, yeah, there's like this S thing going on in my lower spine. And sure enough, there was. And I go, well, what have you done to help with it? And he's like, well, the doctors tell me I have ulcerative colitis and I need to do stretches for my back. And I was like, okay. So what kind of, like, what's your past like? What was your tension in your past? And he used to lift heavy tanks. I don't know exactly what tanks, but heavy tanks. He worked for Coca-Cola and like drank Coke and sugar constantly. So that like tore up his poor gut. And now he's feeling the effects of it, you know, in his late 70s, early 80s. And he's like, I just told him the connection between what was going on, and doesn't it make sense that if you've had so much tension due to the physical, chemical, and emotional stressors you've had in your life, that it is creating this distortion in your spine? And he was like, yeah, that makes total sense. Why isn't anybody else telling me this? And I was like, because they are not looking at it that way. And exercises are great. I highly recommend you keep moving, you know, and he has osteoporosis. And so I was like, yes, weight-bearing exercises, got to do it. You know, like you have to strengthen, but we need to work on nutrition as well. We have to get the right chemicals in, and we can work on your spine. We can help release the tension in your system so that you can really start to feel and function better. And there's going to be more to it than just this. This is like the Proactive Health Collective of Keene is designed to be your healthcare team. Like, we're here in all aspects, whether it's balancing chi, getting the right nutrients, or checking your nervous system. Like, there's so many, there's not one answer. And I think we always want one answer or one quick thing. And I think the biggest challenge today is really understanding what we have available that is going to serve us not only now, but for the future.
Well said. I would like to say, I think the main thing is, and I tell people, it's what you do most of the time. It's not what you do once in a while. I mean, I talk about, you know, making food and all of that. I came home last night and I had to work on a case, and Dale, we ordered pizza. So big deal, right? So once in a while you do that, and it's fine. But I have to look at my digestive health, and I've not been on antibiotics for over 30 years. I've never had, oh gosh, I mean, I've never had anything to impact my gut health in a bad way. And I'm completely consistently the same year after year after year after year after year. So it's really what you do in the grand scheme of things. But, oh, no vaccinations, okay? None of that leaky gut kind of thing. So I've not had any insults to my GI tract. So that's huge. And that means, you know, if you're healthy and you can do that, you can, you know, it's not like you have to be like perfect all the time or do everything perfectly. It's what you do most of the time, but it's also guarding against these things that have huge impact. Antibiotic treatment, which is not followed up with making sure the microbiome gets back into shape, or the fact that we're eating dwarf wheat now, which is 7 times more gluten than the original einkorn wheat of 12,000 years ago. And so we have a lot more people with gluten sensitivity and things like that. We have altered foods, modified foods, and things like that. The things that people don't suspect are causing their problems. And again, you know, I think the gut is a huge gateway for it. And another great way to help heal those things is something like organic sulfur, MSM, which is helps your body create the collagen to repair the leaky gut, to the cardiovasculature. So good for so many other things. Glutamine, I don't know how you feel about that, maybe Dr. Jean, but I know it works well, but I'm always a little hesitant with it because some of it is converted to glutamate. So when you have people with glutamate poisoning through vaccination and stuff, I'm not really big on glutamine, you know, so for that autistic person, you know what I'm saying?
Yep, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Like most
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to just jump off of what Dr. Tisha was talking about, because it just brought this thought to my mind. Is what you were really talking about was a holistic approach, a holistic view, right? You have to look at what's going on in your nervous system, your spine, but you need to look at your nutrition, you need to look at your past stressors, all these things. That is what a holistic approach is. It means understanding that there are many things that can affect our body and many ways that we can address that. And I think one of the thoughts I'd like to share is that, you know, wherever we go, we get, I get acupuncture for my whatever, I've got this problem, I go to the acupuncturist, oh, it worked. And then we forget about it and we just go on with our lives and wait till the next thing that comes up. Oh, last time I had something, I went to Allison and it works, let me go back to her. And I think the key here, and when you really being the advocate for your own body and fostering good health, is that it's something that you do constantly. It's like you nurture your child, you nurture your health. It's not something you do for a 6-week period until the symptom goes away. But when you work on your nervous system, it's something that once you get it and it's feeling good and you're like, wow, life is totally different. You nurture that. It's not like then you forget about it and go back to life and then let yourself get all, you know, wound up again. You want to nurture that. And if you work on, you know, getting your gut repaired and getting, you know, being able to get good nutrition in your microbiome, you nurture that with good foods and probiotic foods and you know, bitter melon or bitters or whatever, you know, like you nurture these become habits. And then you continue to work because there's so much we can do. And we are living in a world that isn't natural. It's not like you can just skate by anymore and just do nothing. It isn't like that anymore. And so as you go through life and you work with a practitioner, then you continue to grow into other areas to really round out your health. And there's so many avenues and so many things you can do. So it is really truly a journey, not just this trip to the doctor kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love that, Gene. That's so true. It's so true. It's a journey. We kind of break it into 4 different categories. And there's like, the first category is people have pain that they're trying to get rid of. You know, they've got a concern, and that's physical, that's mental, that's emotional, that can be spiritual, like whatever it is for them. And then the second group is the group that is trying to prevent those things, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And then the third group is one that's looking to really take their health to the next level. So this, I think, where you're pointing towards with that journey is like, yeah, like you go and you get rid of something, but what if you stuck with it? You know, what if it wasn't about getting rid of something at all, but what if it was like, now you're up in that sort of third tier of like, I'm actually looking like to get a little bit more out of my life. Like, what would it be like if I had like, you know, if I'm just out of pain or just out of concern, that's how much am I leaving on the table? You know, so people come in there looking for more of that. And then there's this other bracket that once you get all that taken care of, it's like, okay, how do I give more of my gifts to the world? Because not being able to give your gifts to the world is a whole nother kind of pain. And so we see this like big trajectory of all of that stuff. And I can't recommend enough, whoever you're working with, wherever you're working, stick with it, like dig in, take it to the next level. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I think of it like a timeline, like over on this end, which is like, you know, there's like this break point, like, okay, sickness, disease, pain, all these things. And you kind of work your way up to, okay, I'm not having any more of those symptoms. But then there's, as I continue on the timeline, am I more flexible? Am I able to adapt to stress better? Am I having more energy? Am I being more creative? Like, these are the, as you continue on the timeline of wellness, really, and as you said, really the litmus of true wellness is contribution.
Yeah.
That's when you're well, because you're able to give of yourself. You're not just surviving, trying to get by, trying to scrape through. You've kind of gone on that path, and that's what really, taking a proactive approach is about. It's not about, yeah, sure, if you've got something going on, you don't have to keep covering it up. You can search out what's happening and use it as an opportunity to really grow, because the truth is, if we don't grow, we won't experience better health. It's not possible.
And yes, amen to all the above. But I do want to say as well, that doesn't mean if you're out there and you have gastrointestinal problems because you didn't eat right, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that. I have somebody right now, and she has clearly, over the years, we have detected, discerned huge connective tissue disorder. So she has seen, a gastrointestinal specialist at Yale. She's, diagnosed with this. It's I can't think of the name of it. It's basically an inconsistent pelvic floor muscle, movement. This goes right in with her connective tissue disorder. And so there are people out there with anatomical problems, with genetic problems, connective tissue disorder. So it doesn't mean, oh my gosh, her diet is pristine and has been for absolutely years. Nobody is more conscientious. So I want to put that out there and just say, we are not saying that if you have gastrointestinal problems, it's all your own fault because you don't eat right and you did this wrong and you did that or not. But when we have people like that, we have to do everything we can to support that connective tissue and see as much help we can get there. There are a lot of facets there, but for the majority, I would say, and here's the problem too, if you don't poop daily, if you're not moving your bowels, you're reabsorbing toxins. There's so much, again, we didn't really talk about that, but the fact that we need to get stuff out. What comes in, it needs to move through, it needs to get out. And
yeah, I think, when it comes to addressing somebody's health and, certainly assessing the digestive system, if someone can't poop, that automatically becomes a priority, because you can't do anything else. Like you said, if you're stocked up and you're not ridding yourself of toxins and waste. So motility is a huge issue. And one of the challenges we see a lot is that when people start having these problems, they get on the
Miralax.
The muscle relaxer, and then the tissue becomes so flaccid that now it's hard to come back. It's hard to get things moving again because they've been relying on these medications. And really, the longer it goes on, a little bit more of a challenge it is to get things straight.
So true. Time and momentum with that stuff. So if you're listening to this and you have a concern and you've been medicating it to just sort of get by, know that the first thing any one of us is going to do is help your body heal from medicating it. And then we'll be able to get toward the real root cause of whatever that is, to the best of the ability. Because like you're talking about, Becky, there can be a limitation to the very matter of the body. There may be, limitations. And so that could be a negative value. And so we stack the deck like nobody's business with positives so that we can balance out and head in a good direction.
Yeah, get your best result. It doesn't mean that we can be fixed pristine, but get our best result.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think, in point is that wherever you are, there's always ways that you can improve. Because I guess what, you see a lot of times people are like, well, I tried this and it didn't work, and I tried that, doesn't work, so I'm giving up. And, the way I look at it is like, if you could do something positive for yourself, it worked. It might not have fixed your symptom, but if you had a better diet, that worked because you're eating better. And if you have less stress, it worked. I don't know if it fixed this or that, but you're in a better place than you were. And so everything that you can do to stack your deck, as I use that terminology a lot too, the better you're going to be, regardless of what you do or don't have congenitally, or what, there are physical limitations that come on from after effects, of an autoimmune disease, perhaps, that deteriorates some tissue. You may not be able to have full recovery from that. You may, I don't know. But you can continually do positive things to nurture yourself regardless of any condition you do or don't have.
And your body is very wise. Your body knows what's good for you. And even if you're watching this and you're thinking it's impossible to have a really good diet because I eat McDonald's 4 times a week and I eat a ton of sugar and I hate vegetables. If you committed for a week, 2 weeks ideally, I have seen so many patients that every morning they've gone to McDonald's and they've had a breakfast sandwich and their diet's atrocious. They're working on the road, eating fast food all the time, snacking with sugar and soda, and they've committed. And in the course of 1.5, 2 weeks, your body really will start to understand. It might be a little difficult at first to just resist the cravings and use your willpower. But then your body really starts to enjoy the vegetables and it starts to understand, oh, this makes me feel energized. And then it starts to put the 2 and 2 together. And then you start to want that stuff. And if you have a ton of sugar cravings and you didn't have sugar for 1 or 2 weeks, your body is not going to crave it as much. It's really going to start. And if it does, it's going to crave it from the whole grains and more like the slowly digested sugars. Yeah. So it's kind of like this instant reward sort of thing. You've got to get over the initial hump of it, but you've got to trust that your body, it knows what nourishment is, and it will fairly quickly, in the scheme of healing, be able to transition, and it'll be a lot easier for you to continue on after that little hump.
Hang in there.
I like that. That's really great. If you tell somebody like a week or 2, you're not saying, okay, do this for 6 months.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a danger in trying to do things for too long, because what we really want to do is we want to create positive momentum. One of the things that we talked about right at the beginning, I think, Allison, you brought this up, that we give to others, but not to self, and so some of that stems from this sort of like, well, if we set a goal too high, like a New Year's resolution, I'm gonna do this for months, then inevitably, eventually life is going to happen and we're going to fall off, and then it can turn into well, that didn't work, but if you make a shorter loop and you have a shorter feedback loop for yourself, do it for a couple of weeks and then reassess, like, well, there's something that we can be successful at, there's something that we can be proud of, and there's something we can create some positive momentum. Because at the end of 2 weeks, you can do whatever you want.
And then you're in a
free.
different state of being because you've done these things for a couple of weeks. And then when you make that decision, you could have a completely different outcome again.
So much momentum builder. That's amazing.
I want to give out a quick shout out to Dr. Gene about doing a protocol with him that we did starting last year. And I was actually told, I don't know the logistics. I'm not going to try and make up the logistics. Just the point was, it's like, okay, something's going on. You should really decrease your coffee intake, like your caffeine intake. And I really only drink coffee as my caffeine intake. And I was like, oh man, because we all love coffee's great. It's just delicious. I'm not going to lie. I love it. And I was like, oh, that hurt to be told. And I was like, all right. And I literally quit cold turkey. It was probably the worst 3 days of my life at the very beginning. I was like, oh my gosh, caffeine withdrawals is a real thing. This really sucks. But I powered through it. And I went from November to February with no coffee in the morning. And I tell you what, since then, I have not drank. I can't even get through, I don't drink this much coffee, but I probably did. But let's say a 16 ounce mug every day, and then probably got a little bit more in the afternoon. I can't even really have more than 12 ounces now for the whole day. And you feel so much better. You feel like you accomplished something and you don't become dependent. It's just delicious. And who doesn't want something warm and delicious on a cold morning, And so I just want to contribute a lot of gratitude towards you, Dr. Gene, and your team for helping that in me. And it was a little rough, but we got through it and I feel much better. And I'm like, don't have to drink that much coffee, and I don't drink it like as much as I probably would want to. So just kind of my body's like, I'm done. I don't have to. So
There you go.
thank
You can
you.
enjoy it without it being an addiction. Awesome.
Exactly. There you go.
Well
All
said.
right.
And I got a shout out to Matt and Tisa. So yesterday I was supposed to have my entrainment at 5:20, but I was like, I had to go back home and continue working on this case. And I was like, it was 5 o'clock and I'm like, I'm getting out of here. I'm getting out of here. And our room was full and the phone rang and I'm talking to this guy and it's like 5:10 and I'm like, I'm out of here and I'm out of here. And I'm like, I gotta go down for this thing. I gotta go down there. I don't want to go down there. I don't want to go down there and lie on a table. I just want to go home. I just want to go home. Right. I mean, really, I said to Sue, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I got to go down there and do this. And every time I
Just her arm.
yeah, but I got to tell you, I don't care. Like, I mean, physically, I feel better once I do that, but I always feel so much better. Like, I didn't feel that way once I got done. Like, I felt so much better, like in my mood and stuff. So it's like, I was like, oh, please, I just don't even want to do this. I just want to get in my car. I want to peel out of here. I want to get out of here. And I was like, I did it. And I was like, I went home, I said to Dale, that's so funny because,
I'm so glad you did it afterwards.
yeah. So I just have to say that. I can't explain how that works, but it was good.
Yeah.
Beautiful, Becky.
Well, we can explain that in another episode.
Yeah, another episode. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I really enjoyed this episode. It was very
Me too.
insightful.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks, everyone.
With you all again. I always learn so much. Really
Yeah.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Be back. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, maybe we'll have some other topics intertwined, but I'd love to talk about autoimmunity a little bit, autoimmune conditions. Huge, we're definitely on the rise now. I'd love to talk about some reasons why and some other theories that might have a better explanation than the body attacking itself. So
Beautiful.
Sure.
Nice.
Sounds good.
All right. Awesome.
have a great weekend.
Take care, everyone.
So long, everyone.
For joining
Thanks,
us.
everybody. Bye.